Good evening. Good evening, everybody. This is the mop-up for May 15th, 2023. Coming up, Howie Klein from Down with Tyranny joins us, and then my exclusive interview with former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. It is not Robert Smigel. People think it is Donald J. Trump will be joining us at the end of tonight's episode. Now, George Soros has been trending all day on Twitter with rumors of his demise. Soros had to take to social media at the end of the day to insist, no, I'm very much still here. So why would Twitter be spreading the rumor that George Soros is dead? Could it have something to do with George Soros believing Tesla is dead, which doesn't make the owner of Twitter, who also owns Tesla, Elon Musk, happy? Could it have something to do with that? You see, Soros is the world's biggest short seller. And according to recent filings, George Soros held 132,000 shares of Tesla as of December 31st of last year. That's according to filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. But we are now learning that at the end of March, George Soros dumped all his shares in Tesla. Could that be why there are now false reports of George Soros's death on Twitter, trending all day? A woman who worked for Rudy Giuliani from 2019 until 2021 filed a lawsuit on Monday in Manhattan Supreme Court, saying while Rudy was working as Donald Trump's lawyer, he ordered her to lie to the FBI and perform oral sex while he was on the phone talking to Donald Trump. Noelle Dunphy is also suing Giuliani for sexual assault and harassment. Dunphy charges Giuliani forced her to engage in violent sex and show up to video conferences topless. She was also ordered to work at the office wearing tight shorts that were red, white, and blue, as opposed to Rudy's shorts, which were red, white, and soiled. Dunphy claims Giuliani, while drenched in alcohol, would say horrible things about blacks, women, and Jews. In other words, he's a Republican. Special counsel John Durham, appointed by Trump's Attorney General Bill Barr to look into Russiagate, issued a 300-page report concluding that in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, the FBI should have never begun an investigation into Donald Trump's connection to Vladimir Putin. Durham's investigation has resulted in 2 acquittals, and he is not expected to charge anyone else. 2 staffers working for Virginia Congressman Jerry Connolly were injured when a 49-year-old man walked into Connolly's Fairfax, Virginia field office and attacked them with a baseball bat. Congressman Connolly, a Democrat, was not there. Talking Points memo reports that Arizona Republican Congressman Paul Gosar has a neo-Nazi working for him. Shocking that there's only one. In Farmington, New Mexico, 3 people, including the shooter, were killed, and 2 police officers, along with several witnesses, were also wounded on Monday. Kid Rock is reportedly the biggest donor to Daniel Penny's defense fund. Penny, white, a Marine veteran, has been charged with killing a black homeless street performer on a New York City subway using a chokehold. GoFundMe reports that Penny's GoFundMe campaign has raised $2 million, making it the second biggest GoFundMe campaign ever. Rock posted a message on GoFundMe calling Penny an American hero. He also referred to Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan district attorney, as a POS. Alvin Bragg is black. Kid Rock is white. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill on Monday banning state funding for diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at all Florida public universities. And Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned on Monday that if Republicans and Democrats don't resolve the debt ceiling crisis, our federal government will run out of cash by June 1st. For more on this, we are joined by the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC. He also writes the Down with Tyranny blog, Howie Klein. Hello, Howie.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, very good.
You know, to say something about something that you were just talking about on the news, which was that debt crisis thing, because you didn't mention something that just sort of broke very in the last hour or so, which is that the White House handed the Republican negotiators a list of 12 loopholes, tax loopholes that would have saved billions of dollars, and said, let's cut these loopholes. And the Republicans just, out of hand, just rejected every single one of the 12 loopholes. I have a story on my blog. I think it's coming out either later tonight or tomorrow that goes into the specifics of what loopholes they were trying to cut and what the Republicans had to say about it.
Well, at Down with Tyranny, you also write about the GOP taking hostages, and you insist that Biden doesn't have to put up with this. Don't they control the House? Can't they gum up the works? How does he work around this with the debt ceiling talks?
Problem. They can definitely make some problems, but Biden can make himself into a great president by getting rid of this hostage taking once and for all, and this fake unconstitutional debt ceiling. And he can do that through the 14th Amendment, and he should. And he's sort of afraid to. And someday a Democratic president with some guts is going to do it. And I'm afraid Biden isn't that one.
What is in the 14th Amendment? What could he do?
It's unconstitutional for anybody to threaten the debt of the United States. I mean, it's absolutely not permitted. I'm in the kitchen right now, so I'm not in front of my computer where I could read the exact words to you. But basically, that's what it says: is that the debt cannot be threatened. And that's exactly what the Republicans would do. I mean, you notice that when there's a Republican president and a Democratic Congress, the Democrats, even though they disagree, they don't do that. It's just the Republicans who do that. Right. And it needs to be stopped once and for all. I don't just mean it needs to be stopped for this round. I mean it needs to be stopped, period, forever. And that's what Biden should do. And instead of being another mediocre president, he would go down in history as a heroic president. Right. But he won't do that.
The 14th Amendment also forbids anyone from serving in Congress if they participated in an insurrection.
Right. That's a different part of the 14th Amendment, and that can't happen because there wouldn't be any Republicans left, or almost no Republicans left in Congress.
You write over at Down with Tyranny that the debt ceiling talks reveal that the Republicans want to add $7 trillion to our debt?
That's right. Their proposals, are if all their proposals passed, the debt would be bigger, not smaller.
So for example, with tax cuts or what? How would they add to the debt? You're sitting right there. Can you read it? I don't. It's okay. We can move on because I wanted to ask you about how you think this is going to play out. Is it conceivable that by June 1st we won't release the debt ceiling, let it go higher, and then we run out of cash, and then what happens?
Well, there's no such thing as running out of cash for the United States can't run out of cash because the United there are a lot of ways to avoid that, and certainly Biden can do that if he wants to. So no, there's no running out of cash.
What did you make of the town hall where Donald Trump said they shouldn't raise the debt ceiling and we should default? And then he was asked by Caitlin Collins. Go ahead.
Yes, he was asked by Caitlin Collins. He was reminded by Caitlin Collins that he had denounced that whole idea when he was president, and then he admitted that. And he said, "Yeah, but that's when I was president."
Right, and everybody laughed.
So that's who Donald Trump is. That's what Donald Trump is all about, and that is what the Republican Party is now all about. They just want to do whatever they can now to get him elected, and that includes destroying the economy of the United States, if not the whole world. And that's who they are. That's what they are, and we're stuck with them.
What did you make?
We're stuck with in Tennessee and Arkansas and etc.
Right. What did you make of the town hall? Did it make you nervous? Did it make you hopeful that he's been exposed?
Yeah, it made me hopeful that the Democrats would get some good sound bites for ads.
Right. And what do you say to somebody like Chris Licht, who runs CNN? He maintains we need to show the American people what the stakes are in the 2024 presidential election. So had we not seen Donald Trump on CNN, we would have no idea if he was dangerous or not. Nobody has a clue what this guy is like. We have to see him on CNN in order to make a decision. What do you think about platforming him on CNN?
Well, first of all, you asked me what I think about what I would say to Licht, which would be resign. And I think that platforming him on CNN is a big mistake because there are, I don't know what the percentage is, but let's just say there are between 30 and 40% of Americans listen to that stuff and they love it. They think, yeah, that's my guy.
Right.
And like, sane people were surprised by what he said. This is Trump. He was completely 100% on brand.
Right. What do you think his chances are now, being accused and sort of convicted of not necessarily rape, but sexual assault? How do the evangelicals square their religious beliefs with the fact that he's a rapist?
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't care.
Do not care.
Okay.
No, I have two sisters. One of them is sane, just a regular normal person, and the other one is a MAGA, and the sane one asked the MAGA, what she, right after the town hall, she asked her what does she think, and the MAGA said it was all fake news. None of the accusations against Trump are real. It's all made up, and she then asked her, did you see the Access Hollywood tape? And the MAGA sister said no, she had never seen it. She didn't know what it was. And then she said, did you see that tape of Trump identifying, what's her name, Jean Carroll. Jean Carroll identified, when Trump said she's not his type, then Trump identified a picture of her as his former wife.
Right.
And you'd think that everyone has seen that video. It's certainly been played all the time when I have the TV on, and the MAGA sister had never seen it. She was unaware of it.
Right. Are you cooking dinner?
I'm not telling you about my something like that. The point isn't that I want to tell you about my family. The point is that I want to tell you that MAGAs don't know about this stuff. They're ignorant. They're living in their own stupidity and ignorance. And the ratings for that town hall were gigantic. I don't remember what they were exactly, but I think it was 1.3 million. And then the next day, CNN's ratings, shrunk back down to where they always are.
So we need him to make money, right? He makes money.
Well, we don't, but
well,
I guess Chris Licht probably was gambling that that there'd be some stickiness and that some of these MAGAs who tuned in to see Trump would stick around and start watching CNN, but they didn't.
Isn't that interesting? That's really
and
interesting.
He should have been able to figure that out.
Yeah. That it's not the guests you have on the show or your network, it's the quality of the guests and what it reveals about your ethos. So speaking of ethos, I'm going to play a clip of Franklin Delano Roosevelt talking about an economic bill of rights. I know you had dinner with Alan Minsky. He's the executive director of Progressive Democrats of America. He, along with Professor Harvey J. Kaye, have been calling for a modern-day economic bill of rights. You write about an economic bill of rights. This is from 1944. It is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, wartime president, insisting that after the war, we have to fight a war on income inequality, This is pretty incredible stuff to hear from a president of the United States. This is 1944, Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
In our day, certain economic truths have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom, freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care, and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world.
That is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1944, the same year he died, a year before Hitler died and World War II had ended. Howie Klein, you and I are cut from the same cloth, raised with the same values. If you're a Democrat and you get up every morning and don't think about an economic Bill of Rights, what should be done with you? What should we do with these? You call them dinos?
Yeah. Well, the reason that I embedded that on my blog and asked my readers to listen to it is because there was a poll that just ran that day, that was just released that day, and they asked American voters, registered American voters, likely voters, what do you think of these things? And they didn't play the tape, but they listed them one after the other. And overwhelmingly, the American public wanted these things that Franklin Roosevelt spoke about. Even Republicans, I mean, not as big majorities of Republicans, but even majorities of Republicans agreed. Now, they didn't tell the Republicans that this was FDR. They just asked them, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? They were into all of them. So I fault our politicians for not moving ahead, for being tepid about it. And that includes these dinos, Democrats in name only. And there are lots and lots of them, and they're afraid. And they operate from a place of fear. And that's why, 1944, the president called for this stuff, and it's almost 2024, and a lot of it still hasn't been enacted, or if it has been, the things that have been enacted have only been partially enacted.
You write over Down with Tyranny that when Roosevelt became president, there were 40 million Americans living in poverty. When Biden became president, Howie, how many Americans were living in poverty?
40 million.
40 million. Identical number.
Yep.
Smaller percentage. We've grown. And then you have a picture, an engraving at the Roosevelt Memorial in Washington, D.C. that says, "The tests of our progress." This is from Franklin Roosevelt. And this should be like the first commandment in all religions. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. What else should we be talking about? If you go to Washington,
that I was going to say that goes right back to what we started talking about in the beginning of this call about these loopholes. Because, well, loophole here, a loophole there. It comes to billions and billions of dollars. I mean, a loophole is, for example, when you don't have to pay taxes on your yacht or private jet. You get a tax deduction for buying a yacht and operating a private jet. It should be the opposite. You should pay higher taxes. But that isn't the way the Republicans want it. That isn't the way conservatives want it. And just down the list of these loopholes are all of these ways that the rich get richer and at the expense of the middle class and at the expense of the working families. You know, one of them that I wrote a little more about was one that I experienced a lot when I worked at Warner Brothers, which is a tax deduction that corporations can take for food and beverages and entertainment. And that comes to gigantic amounts of money. I mean, I'm talking about billions of dollars because executives, and I was one of them, can go out and eat every night and it's on the government.
Right.
I didn't do this, can order, $200 bottles of wine every day. And that gets paid by the taxpayers. They can fly first class. They can stay in incredible $2,000 a night suites, and all that gets paid by the taxpayers. That's what a loophole is. And like I said, Biden was asking the Republicans to let's get rid of some of these loopholes. I mean, the ones that they were asking about that I'm sure of were not even that much. They were like trickery that cryptocurrency gamblers use. Let's get rid of that loophole so the cryptocurrency gamblers can't rip off the public. And the Republicans said no, they wouldn't go for it.
Right.
So,
I'm sure Herman Cain, who used to head the Restaurant Manufacturing Association, loved those loopholes because it does keep restaurants in business. I mean, it is a way of subsidizing waiters and chefs in a way. But
there are other ways to subsidize waiters and chefs. You can do it for people who actually need that food rather than people who don't need the food. People who, the executives at these companies, they're making 6 and 7 figures. They don't need to get these kind of breaks. How about the poor people who do need to get these kind of breaks?
Right.
Does anyone ever think of that? And the answer is no, they don't think of that.
Or just opening up soup kitchens that are essentially restaurants and community gathering points where people can eat for free and talk and mobilize and plot the overthrow of the oligarchs. That's what I would like to see.
You can't ban in Florida. As of today, that's illegal.
You can't what?
You can't get together and plot the overthrow of the oligarchs. As of today, that's illegal.
In Florida?
Yeah, in Florida.
Yeah.
DeSantis signed a bill saying no plotting allowed.
Right. No plotting of equity, no teaching of equity. I want to talk about...
There were 5 bills. One of them was no teaching of equity. Another one was no discussion of race. Another one was no plotting to overthrow the oligarchs.
So I want to get to the Kentucky primaries and Thailand and Feinstein. But before we move on, you write over at Down with Tyranny about the Economic Bill of Rights. And I'm just going to list what you say should be enshrined into our Constitution. I mean, that is what the Economic Bill of Rights calls for. The same way you have a right to remain silent in the Fifth Amendment. These are basic rights that Franklin Roosevelt and you and Alan Minsky, executive director of the Progressive Democrats of America, and Professor Harvey J. Kaye are calling for. A right to a job, a right to adequate income, a right to food, shelter, and recreation. Imagine that, a right to recreation.
It's easy to imagine. That's what these loopholes are about. Recreation for the very, very wealthy. That's what it's being paid for by the government.
Right.
I had front row tickets for the Lakers. I could go to any concert I want anywhere in the world and sit in the front row, and the taxpayer picked it up.
Right. But the Republicans do not care if the 99% relax, can go camping, can buy a motorhome, it's amazing the vision that Franklin Roosevelt had back then, calling recreation an inalienable right, freedom from unfair competition and monopolies. Well, that should be enshrined into our Constitution. Decent housing, adequate medical care, Social Security, and education. He did deliver on Social Security, Roosevelt.
I mean, he did. It was partial. It was a partial delivery. It was fantastic, but there was much more that the progressives want to include in that, and they had to compromise and not have some of that stuff in there.
Like giving it to black people, to farmhands, nannies. The work that black people did in the 30s and 40s were exempted from Social Security. It's amazing.
Right. Remember, the Democratic base in Congress was largely in the South. So all these white Southerners, Roosevelt depended on them completely. He couldn't get anything done without them. And they loved the idea of the New Deal, except they didn't want black people to participate.
Yeah.
So they did whatever they could to exclude the black people.
And Professor Harvey J. Kaye, who writes extensively on Franklin Delano Roosevelt, says that Truman could have gotten us something resembling what they had in Great Britain under Clement Attlee, some kind of socialized medicine. But the Democrats in the South did not want black people getting free medical care. Racism, is that separate from economic opportunity? Do we have?
Of course not.
In other words, do you think that making everybody safe and secure financially inoculates them from racism, or is racism something separate? I've been asking this question for the past 2 weeks. Do you think a rising tide lifts all boats and inoculates one of the added benefits of making sure everybody can eat and has a job is it inoculates them from racism? I don't think it necessarily does.
It doesn't necessarily do it. It could help, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think people are born racist. I don't believe that. I think that racism is taught, and poor white people are taught to be racists, to make themselves seem better than somebody, so they don't feel like they're at the bottom of the heap.
Right.
Okay. And I have a cartoon up on Down with Tyranny also that someone drew for me that I think is a fantastic cartoon. And it shows a very rich guy and also someone, a poor white guy. And the poor white guy is saying, why he votes Republican, and the rich white guy is laughing at him and saying why he votes Republican, which is basically so that poor white guys will, look the other way and not look at look at racism.
Right.
Look at and adopt racism and embrace racism.
Right. Let's go to Kentucky. Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leaders from Kentucky. Rand Paul is from Kentucky. They're having primaries on Tuesday in the Republican Party to pick a candidate for governor. There's several African Americans running for governor, one of whom is the Attorney General, an African American. So what are we looking at Tuesday?
Well, we're looking at a bunch of maggots, so, don't get excited.
You're looking at a bunch of what?
Maggots. They're all MAGA people. There's one guy who's kind of a mainstream Republican, who's the Secretary of Agriculture or the Commissioner of Agriculture, where I'm not sure what they call it now. And he's a mainstream Republican, but he's still I should say a mainstream conservative, but he's still very conservative. And he's the best of them. The others, this Attorney General, crazy woman, Chris Kraft, who, she was very frustrated. She was Trump's ambassador to the UN after Nikki Haley left, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Chris Kraft, she was getting very, very desperate because the Attorney General is ahead of her and he's increasing his lead over her. So she made an announcement last week that when she's governor, there will be no transgender children in school. I mean, this is the level that we're talking about in the Kentucky Republican Republican primary. They're all like absolutely awful, and there's sort of a fight, to the bottom of who can be worse, because the feeling is that whoever is worse is going to win.
Right. Now there is hope in Kentucky.
The reason I wrote about kind of a joke. I wrote about it because it was a post about all of the elections that took place this weekend. In normal countries they have elections on weekends, so people don't have to take off from work and they can just go and vote on a free day. So there was a very, very important election in Thailand. There was one in Turkey, and one of the Indian states, one of the giant Indian states that's as big as most countries, they also had one. And in the Indian state, the Modi's party, the fascist party, was defeated really roundly. And in Thailand, where I was just a few weeks ago, and I noticed that there was an election going on, the most progressive party won the most seats, and by far. And the military junta-backed parties just lost everything. The main party of the current prime minister went down to 36 seats, whereas the Liberal Party, I think they won around 150 something seats. So it was a big day in Thailand, and then in Turkey we're left in a different kind of a situation. Again, another country I really love, with a kind of an authoritarian leader, and he for the first time he didn't win a majority, and nor did his parliamentary party win a majority. So there will be runoffs at the end of May.
Okay.
So it's still to be. I don't feel great about the way that's going to come out, but it's still to be determined.
Right. And maybe the authoritarian impulses in Europe are lifting. We have Orban, but maybe Europe is souring on authoritarianism. Who knows? Hard to say. Before you go, Dianne Feinstein, you do not like her. Do you have any sympathy?
Well, I never have. I've known her from the time that she was on the Board of Supervisors, like, the county Board of Supervisors back in San Francisco. And she was a dino then. She, everyone knew it in San Francisco that she was the person who was the most like a Republican. And no one liked her. I mean, they tried to impeach her, recall her at one time when she became mayor. Once Harvey Milk and George Moscone were assassinated, she was elected by the Board of Supervisors to be the next mayor. And then when she ran as an incumbent. At that time, I backed Jello Biafra, the lead singer of the Dead Kennedys.
Right.
There were, I believe, either 10 or 12 candidates, and Jello came in fourth.
Right. Before you go,
he was my candidate.
Two quick things. They're filming another documentary in your home. Who spoke with you this time? For those of you who don't know Howie, before he ran the Blue America PAC and wrote Down with Tyranny, he was a big-time record executive with Reprise, Warner Brothers, and 415 Records, and look him up. There's a whole other.
And this went back to the 415 days. In San Francisco, there was a club which had actually started in the 1930s, and it was for deaf people. It was in the Mission District, which was now the Mission District is very gentrified. Back then, you could hear gunshots every night, and it was not gentrified at all. But there was this deaf space there, and some punk rockers asked them if they could put on shows, and the people who were running it, who were deaf, said yes. And it became a regular venue for punk rockers. And so it was called the Deaf Club. And a deaf guy is the executive producer, and he came over to my house with a crew, and we spent a couple of hours talking about what that club was like. Wow. And that was fun. All my bands played there.
That is fascinating. And everybody was rocking out and dancing. And you could feel...
Right, and the way that people could hear the music. Right, and they all held balloons, so they would be standing there with clutching a balloon, and they would get the music from that. Also, if you're deaf, you can stand right in front of the speakers, and you don't go deaf. If you're not deaf, you can't stand in front of the speakers, or you will go deaf.
Right.
But if you are deaf already, you can feel those vibrations as well. The other thing is that the floors were wooden. and you can also feel the vibrations of loud music from the wooden floors. So there were ways that they got into it, and it was, fascinating. And the energy in that place was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable.
And
so that's what we talked about. It was fun.
I want to see that. That sounds fascinating. I would assume at a Dylan concert, they'd be the happiest people. They wouldn't have to hear his voice. I love Bob Dylan. That's not fair. Howie Klein is the founder and treasurer of the Blue America PAC. I believe you will be joining us Friday night with Jessica Anderson. We're going to do a fundraiser for Jessica Anderson. Is that correct?
I'm so looking forward to it. And by the way, just so you know, Jessica Anderson won the Blue America contest. I sent her a $1,000 check today.
We're raising money for Jessica Anderson. She is going to be the Democratic nominee for the Virginia.
She is. There's no primary. She is the nominee already. So she's up against a Republican incumbent in a newly drawn district that's very, very 50-50. It's a swing district, and she can win this thing and defeat the Republican who's calling herself an incumbent when there really is no incumbent because it's a new district.
Right.
It's in Williamsburg, Virginia, and York County.
And this is to become a Virginia delegate. That's what they call them, delegates. And Virginia has an off-year election cycle, so Virginians go to the polls this November, and we will meet Jessica Anderson. She was on the show last week. Everybody loves her. She was on the show last week. Come to office hours on Friday night. We're going to fundraise for Jessica Anderson. Howie Klein will be there. Read him every day over at Down with Tyranny. Thank you so much, Howie Klein.
My pleasure. Thanks. I'll talk to you.
I'll see you Friday. Thank you. Read Howie Klein every day over at Down with Tyranny. He is my political compass. Nobody knows more about progressive politics than Howie Klein. And you're listening to The David Feldman Show, davidfeldmanshow.com. Coming up, my interview with former President Donald J. Trump. I want to ask you all, if you are enjoying this episode, to hit the like button. That's the best way to ensure that the show keeps coming your way. And please share it with your friends. The only reason, I say this all the time, the only reason any of you are listening to me right now is because one of your friends forwarded and copied and pasted the link of an episode and placed it in an email or put it up there on social media. So please share this episode if you liked it, and please subscribe to my channel and go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter. It comes out every Friday. Well, Donald J. Trump is the former president of the United States, and I talked with him earlier today, and it is not Robert Smigel. I can swear on a Bible this is Donald J. Trump. Thank you.
Go ahead, take it, David.
Thank you.
Because I know, David, how much your people like to take.
I'm sorry, my people?
You know, David, the Soros people, the Soros worshippers, the Soros backers, all those people.
Like the Jews. You mean the Jews?
Who said anything about the Jews? You're so gross, David, putting words in my mouth, David.
Mr. President, you just said the Soros worshippers?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Come
David.
on, you're being disingenuous.
I love the Jews, David. Trump loves the Jews, David. My daughter married a Soros-backed worshiping Soros person, David.
Soros-backed?
Terrific people, David. The Soros-backed, Soros-worshipping Soros people. They have amazing powers, David.
That is classic code for the Jews.
Amazing powers, these people. They can take any judge and turn him into a liberal, David. Any judge they want with their amazing Soros-backed powers, David.
You do realize that this is...
What? I'm talking about the Soros people.
You're talking about the Jews.
Did I mention the Jews? You're the one who can't stop talking about the Jews, David. You're the only one in the room who said anything about the Jews. And by the way, I might as well be an honorary Soros-backed, Soros-worshipping person. Because the Soros worshippers in the Holy Land of Is Soros, they love Trump.
I'm sorry, what country? What country are you talking about?
The Holy Land of Is Soros.
Is Soros. There's
Is Soros, the capital Jerusalos. It used to be Telesoros, and then I took care of that. I said I want the embassy in Jerusalos. Jerusalos, because believe me, the Soros worshippers and Is Soros, they can't believe. I'll tell you what they can't believe, and this is so sad, David.
Yeah.
Did you know that the Soros-backed Soros worshippers in America, they don't vote for Trump? It's incredible because the Holy Land of Is Soros never had a bigger friend than Trump. Ask anyone in Jerusalem.
Who's the prime minister of Is Soros?
It's Benjamin Netanyahu Soros. He knows where his matzah is cream.
Did you say he knows which side his matzah has the
And he
horseradish?
knows where his matzah is cream cheese. He knows, David. He knows.
So you are the biggest friend of Is Soros. The country Is Soros. Okay. I think you're gaslighting me. You know, you're very charming.
I don't know what you're talking about, David.
I feel your gas.
Now
I
I'm
feel
a
you're
gaslighter.
charming me. And
First, I don't like the Jews. Now I'm a gaslighter. Let me ask you something. I'm asking you to ask me,
okay.
why do I love the West Bank so much? Because I do. I love the West Bank. I love the West Bank, David.
Okay.
Why do I love the West Bank?
Why do you?
Go ahead and ask, David. Why do I
Okay.
love the West Bank?
Why do you love the
Go
West?
ahead.
Why
Go
do
ahead
you?
and ask.
Why do you love the West Bank?
Ask me, David.
What the West Bank? Why do you, Donald Trump, love the West Bank?
Because it's the only bank in the world I don't owe money to, David. Get it? West
Yes.
Bank. Take
Yes.
it, David. That's your joke. Take it. Take the joke, David.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's charity. That's me providing charity for poor Soros-backed people that need help, David. You're trying to do a comedy. Take the joke, David.
Thank you.
Take the West Bank joke, David, just like you took the West Bank from the Palestinians.
See, that's not nice.
Joke, David, take it. You people I love you people because you people just love to take.
Okay, again
love
with
to
my
take
people, my
David.
people. Why were you?
Who said anything about the Jews, David?
You just
Haven't heard a single word about the Jews
you
except
just said my people, the
Except
Jews.
from
It's a
you.
little uncomfortable.
David, let me ask you something. How could Trump possibly hate the Jews? My Lord and Savior, David, Jesus Christ, was originally a Soros-backed, Soros-worshipping Sorosian.
He was a Sorosian?
He was a Sorosian, and then he realized that the Sorosians were donating to Alvin Bragg, David,
Alvin Bragg.
to the disgusting, corrupt DA.
So Alvin Bragg.
The Sorosians were donating to Alvin Bragg, and Jesus said, you know what? I'm going to create my own religion. He did, David, made a fortune, too.
Jesus made a.
Huge fortune, David. Very smart. But love, David, it was all, a lot of money, all made from love, David.
Sweet. That is my exclusive interview with Donald J. Trump, former president of the United States. We talked earlier this morning. That is Donald Trump, the 40. I'm being handed a note here. Hang on for 1 second. See, I'm being told that that is not Donald Trump. I'm being told that it's Robert Smigel. I don't know who Robert Smigel is. I never met the man. I know that this is Donald J. Trump. I don't know who Robert Smigel is. So you're wrong. Once again, you're wrong. That is our show. Thank you so much. Please leave a comment. I read all the comments. If you're a regular listener, you know that I hit the heart button. You can tell that I read your comment because I will hit the heart button. I can't respond to all your comments, but I try to. And please hit the like button. That's very important to keep this show, to sustain the show. Please share it with your friends. We have a brand new audio podcast of my entire podcast that's posted every morning at 9 a.m. here on YouTube. The show is essentially a podcast, an audio podcast, and we are posting the entire podcast every morning at 9 a.m. There's a new episode of my podcast, which is now coming out close to 7 days a week. And it's audio, there's no video, but it comes out on YouTube at 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 days a week. So please subscribe to that. And what else? Please subscribe to my newsletter. And please share this. And office hours will be this Friday night at 8 p.m. We're booking it as we speak, but we will have Howie Klein and Jessica Anderson, who's running for delegate in Virginia. We're going to raise some money for her, and you can get to talk to her and ask questions. So office hours is every Friday night at 8 p.m. I want to meet my listeners. We have a small little show here, and I like to meet the people who listen to this show. We have a small community. So go to my website and hit office hours, and it'll give you the link. Or if you sign up for my newsletter, that always includes a link for office hours. I'm going to end with Franklin Roosevelt, right? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to say goodnight. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak.
In our day, certain economic proofs have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living, the right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom, freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad, the right of every family to a decent home, the right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health, the right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment, the right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward in the implementation of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be lasting peace in the world.